My name is Ethan. I'm 32, and at my own family's Thanksgiving dinner, they voted me out of the family. That sentence still feels unreal when I say it out loud, but it happened. The air that night was thick enough to cut with a knife, and across the table my sister Rachel stood up holding her wine glass like it was a gavel. Her voice was full of smug ceremony as she declared, "We've discussed this. We've voted. Ethan, you're not family anymore." I watched my brother-in-law Greg clap slowly, his smirk sharp enough to slice through bone. Then my mother joined in a weak fluttering applause, and even my father, who couldn't lift his eyes from his plate of turkey, nodded along. They were all united against me. And I didn't cry, I didn't shout. Instead, I laughed. A soft, low sound that startled them. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Then you won't need this." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thick manila folder. I set it down in the center of the table, the weight of it thudding against the wood, sliding until it stopped right in front of Rachel's plate. She grabbed it, flipped it open, and her smug smile drained from her face. At first, it wasn't even a scream, just a sharp, choked gasp like the air had been stolen from her lungs. Her skin turned white as she flipped page after page, each sheet pulling her deeper into horror. But to understand what was in that folder, you have to understand how I ended up here. It began 3 months before with a single phone call. Rachel had asked me to co-sign a massive loan for her new spa venture. For the first time in my life, I said no. The silence that followed was colder than any winter in Ohio. From that moment, I was exiled. Ghosted from the family group chat, left out of barbecues, erased from holiday photos. The rejection burned, but what hurt worse was realizing how conditional their love had always been. And as I drove through the familiar streets to that dinner, memories replayed in my mind. I thought of the nights I'd eaten instant ramen so I could wire Rachel $12,000 for her dental emergency. I thought of the calls from Mom crying about credit card debt and how I paid it without hesitation. I thought of Greg's failed startup idea that I poured $20,000 into never seeing a cent back. The total made me sick when I finally forced myself to calculate at $85,000. Not once did they pay me back. Not once did they say thank you like they meant it. But the money wasn't what finally broke me. It was a text from Rachel sent by mistake. I still remember the words, "Just have to sweet-talk him a little. The spineless cash cow will pay up." A second later, the message vanished, replaced with, "Sorry, wrong person." But I had already taken the screenshot. Spineless cash cow, that's all I was to them. I walked around in a fog for days. Finally, my best friend David sat across from me in a cafe and said, "They're not family, Ethan, they're parasites. Protect yourself, document everything." So I did. I dug through old bank statements, receipts, emails, credit card bills. At first, it was just to face the truth for myself. But then I found more things that made me sick, like the Miami hotel bill Rachel had sworn was for an emergency business conference. The charge was almost double what she'd told me. When I called the hotel for a breakdown, they mentioned a spa package for a second guest, a Miss Jess. I didn't know any Jess. I printed it, slid it into the folder, and kept digging. By the time the folder was full, I felt strangely calm. My lawyer had told me evidence is your only shield. That's what I carried with me into Thanksgiving dinner. That's what I laid on the table when they told me I wasn't family anymore. And when Greg snatched the folder from Rachel, sneering, "What is this, Ethan?" Some kind of joke, his face went pale as soon as he saw the first page. It was a spreadsheet, neat and merciless. Dates, recipients, amounts, and at the bottom in bold red letters, $85 for $20. My father's face turned red, my mother pale. Rachel sat frozen, unable to speak. And then I pointed to the Miami bill, my voice calm. "One question," I said, locking eyes with Greg. "Who's Jess?" Greg's head snapped toward Rachel, his confusion dark and dangerous. "Yeah, Rachel, who the hell is Jess?" The united front shattered in an instant. Rachel's fork clattered against her plate, her fingers trembling as she tried to form words. It's nothing, Greg. Don't listen to him, he's twisting." But Greg was already on his feet, his voice sharp and shaking. "Don't lie to me. Who is Jess?" The room erupted into chaos. My mother gasped, clutching her pearls like she could strangle the truth out of the air. My father muttered something about keeping this private, but his voice was drowned out by Greg's fury. Rachel stammered, her face blotched red, but her silence was answer enough. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. For once, the spotlight of shame wasn't on me. It was on them. Ethan. My mother hissed finally, her voice low and venomous. How could you do this at Thanksgiving? This is family business. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed against the walls. Family business. You told me I wasn't family 5 minutes ago. Which is it, Mom? Am I disposable or am I blood when it's convenient? Her mouth opened but no words came out. Greg snatched the folder again, flipping further. His eyes darted over the bank transfers, the receipts, the hotel bills. His lips moved as he added numbers in his head, and then he froze. 85,000, he whispered, as if the sum itself might break him. He turned to Rachel, his voice quieter now, deadlier. You told me he gave you 5. Just 5. Rachel's tears spilled over, then messy and frantic. Greg, please, it wasn't like that, he's exaggerating. I cut her off. Exaggerating. Want me to read the texts out loud? Spineless cash cow. That's what I am to you, right, Rachel? I pulled out my phone and held up the screenshot for everyone to see. The words glared back at us all in cruel, undeniable clarity. My father slammed his fist on the table, rattling the glasses. Enough. We are not airing this filth over turkey. I turned to him, my chest burning. You should have said enough years ago when she was bleeding me dry. But you didn't. You let it happen. You all did. All. For the first time in my life, he looked away. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the sound of Rachel's sobbing. And then Greg did something I never expected. He shoved his chair back and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. My mother called after him, but her voice cracked. Rachel crumpled, sliding down in her chair, whispering to no one in particular. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I stared at her, at the sister I had once adored, and felt nothing but emptiness. No pity, no anger, just the hollow recognition of who she truly was. I stood slowly, the chair legs screeching against the hardwood. Every eye turned to me, but I didn't tremble. Not anymore. You voted me out, I said quietly. But the truth is, I left long before tonight. This family stopped being mine the moment you decided my only worth was what I could pay for. I walked around the table, past my father's bowed head, past my mother's trembling hands, past Rachel's broken sobs. At the doorway, I paused. Consider this my vote, I said. I'm done. I stepped into the cold November night, the air biting at my skin, and for the first time in years I felt free. Behind me, I could still hear the muffled chaos of my family unraveling, but it no longer belonged to me. The folder was lighter now, missing the copies I had already given to my lawyer. They thought they could strip me of my name, my place, my worth. But what they didn't know was that I had already stripped them of their illusions. As I walked down the driveway, the sky above was a wide, starless black. I felt small under it, but not powerless. Not anymore. The cold followed me home like a shadow, even after the apartment warmed around me. I stood in the kitchen with my coat still on, hands braced on the counter, listening to the hum of the refrigerator like it could anchor me. It's funny what your body remembers when your mind is wrecked. Textures, temperatures, the sound a glass makes when it meets wood. I poured water and forced myself to drink. The adrenaline was already receding, leaving that hollow ache grief wears when it wants to be mistaken for relief. My phone lit up on the table, a chorus of family names stacked like a bad poem. My mother, first 3 missed calls, then the text. You embarrassed us. Call me now. My father, 1 line so clipped it could have been cut with shears. We'll discuss this privately. Rachel's messages came as fragments. Greg left. You ruined everything. You don't understand what I've been going through. The entitlement in every word made me lightheaded. Somewhere under all of it, a thin thread of sorrow tightened, a mourning for the family I had written in my head, not the one that existed in real time. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb and opened the folder's twin, the copy I'd kept at home. The papers didn't care how I felt. They were just facts, simple and brutal. Dates, numbers. The Miami bill with the spa package for 2 Miss Jess. The Venmo transfers labeled gas and emergency that were really concert tickets and just because gifts. The first time I'd wired Rachel money, I was 22 and working nights at the grocery store, too young to understand what a pattern looks like when it starts small. The last time had been 3 months ago when I finally heard my own no and believed it. David texted a single question. "You breathing?" I wrote back. "Trying." He replied with a photo of a dog in a sweater and no further commentary, the kind of mercy you only learn after you've bled on someone's kitchen floor at 3 a.m. Sleep was a rumor I couldn't reach. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and let my brain spool through old scenes, my sister at 8 tugging my sleeve and asking if I'd swap chores because she had homework. Me at 12 hand-washing my father's work shirts because mom was exhausted. The way praise in our house migrated like weather hovering over whoever needed something from me. Even love had an invoice. The next morning my lawyer called. "I sent the demand letter last week like we discussed," she said, efficient and calm. "Receipt confirmed. The repayment plan is reasonable, 24 months, no interest itemized. If they ignore it, we escalate." Her voice softened. "How did dinner go?" "About as well as handing a lit match to a gas leak," I said, and we both tried to laugh. I worked a full day anyway because routine is a kind of raft. In the late afternoon, my father's name floated onto my screen again. I let it ring until the sound turned to silence. He texted, "Come by tomorrow at 6. We will resolve this as a family." Resolve. That word on his tongue had always meant Ethan Benz. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled my credit report, a habit I'd learned after Rachel borrowed my card once for books, and I found a $900 charge at a boutique. The report loaded, and a slow, familiar dread moved through me. 2 old retail cards I'd never opened. A used car loan, from when I was 19 that I had never taken. My stomach went cold. I dug deeper, clicked through the tiny blue hyperlinks, and saw the dates. Both accounts opened when I was 17. Both mailed to my parents' address. Both paid off quickly like someone sprinting across thin ice and praying it doesn't crack. My hands shook as I called David. "Do you remember if my mom ever asked for my social when I was in high school for paperwork?" He didn't hesitate. Your mom asked you for everything. Library fines, camp forms." "Why?" I told him. He swore under his breath, then said, "Get the statements. Get the old mail if you can. This isn't just messy. This might be identity fraud." The word fraud pinballed in my head. I thought of being 17 counting quarters for gas, wondering why I couldn't qualify for a student card freshman year. The math rearranged itself around me. For the first time, the house I had grown up in looked like it did when the lights are off, familiar angles, strange shadows. I called the bank where my parents had their mortgage. The man on the line sounded tired and kind. He couldn't tell me much, but the file notes triggered the memory I had been avoiding the spring 2 years ago, when the bank sent a notice of default, and my mother called me weeping so hard the words broke apart. I had written a check for the back taxes and insisted on paperwork, a lien recorded in my name, a quitclaim deed for a percentage if they missed another payment. My father had been furious, called me a traitor. My mother had kissed my cheek and told me I was such a good son. They made the next payment barely. I had stopped checking after that. Love is so much heavier when it's collateral. I drove to their house anyway, because part of me needed to stand in front of it and remember what was true. The lawn looked too perfect under the November sky, the porch light a staged glow. As I stood there, the curtains shifted and my mother appeared, her face rising like a moon in the window. She didn't wave. She didn't invite me in. The door stayed closed. A car pulled into the curb behind me. Uncle Henry got out, the only person in our family who ever told the truth without wrapping it in lace. "You look like hell," he said, and then he hugged me so fast I barely had time to brace. We stood like that longer than men in my family are supposed to. He didn't ask for this story. He handed me a thin folder instead. "Found this in Dad's old files after he passed," he said. "It's not pretty. Your mother asked me to shred it back then." I didn't. His gaze was steady. "You weren't supposed to see it." In the car, I opened it under the dome light. A letter from a department store thanking Mr. Ethan Collins for opening an account in 2010. A photocopy of an application form with my social, my birth date, my parents' address, and my mother's handwriting in the margins. "Use Ethan, he's responsible." A printout of a voicemail transcript from a collections agent warning of legal action. and at the back a thin slip from the county recorder's office acknowledging receipt of the lien I'd filed 2 years ago, the one on the house where I was no longer family. The quiet that followed wasn't peace. It was a loading bar. Each page clicked something into place until the picture they had worked so hard to blur snapped sharp. It wasn't just that they took. It was that they believed they had a right to me, like my life was a pantry they could raid in the night. My phone buzzed. A final text from my father tomorrow at 6. Don't be dramatic. Bring that folder so we can settle this once and for all. I looked back at the porch light, steady and false. I thought of the quitclaim deed in a drawer at my apartment, the lien, the demand letter, the letter in my lap with my mother's handwriting. I thought of the words Rachel had said at the table we voted. You're not family anymore. Maybe the only vote that mattered now was mine. I put the car in drive, and for the first time I knew exactly how the next chapter would be written. The next evening I drove back, folder in the passenger seat like a co-pilot whispering directions. The neighborhood was washed in that dim November light where everything looks gray, like the world is holding its breath. I parked in front of the house I had once called home and sat there with the engine ticking, heart pounding like it wanted out. 6 o'clock sharp. Their invitation wasn't about reconciliation, it was about control. But this time I wasn't arriving as a son, desperate to be accepted. I was arriving as the man they had made wary, wounded, and finally unafraid to show the receipts. The dining room was set as if for another holiday, placemats, candles, a bowl of cranberries in the center like some kind of peace offering. My mother sat stiff-backed, pearls at her throat, eyes sharp. My father at the head of the table, arms crossed. Rachel was there too, hair pulled back tight, her face blotchy but her jaw defiant. No Greg. That absence roared louder than words. Sit, my father said. His voice carried the weight of command, the same tone that had bent me for years. I sat, but not as the boy he remembered. I placed the folder on the table and kept my hand on it. My mother leaned forward. Ethan, this ugliness has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now put that away and we can move on as a family. I laughed softly. Family. Yesterday I was voted out. Today I'm summoned like a witness. Which is it? Her lips pressed thin. Rachel shifted in her chair, muttering, You're enjoying this, aren't you? I looked at her, really looked at the sister who had once braided my hair when I was little, who had borrowed my hoodie in high school and never returned it, who had grown into someone who saw me only as a lifeline to drain. No, I said. There's nothing enjoyable about watching the people you love become strangers. My father slammed his hand against the table, rattling the candles. Enough sentiment. Let's be clear. That lien you filed on this house that ends now, you will sign it away. The old reflex kicked in. The one that made me obey, made me shrink. But I felt the folder under my hand and remembered every sleepless night, every overdraft, every sneer. No, I said simply. His eyes flared. No. I slid the photocopy of the store account across the table, the one with my social, my birth date, and my mother's handwriting. This is fraud. Identity theft. Committed when I was still a kid. I could take this to the police tonight. Do you want me to? The color drained from my mother's face. Ethan, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You didn't think I'd ever notice. You didn't think I'd ever stop paying. But I have. Rachel's voice cracked. So what now? You ruin us. You put Mom in jail. You tear everything down. I leaned forward, my voice steady. You did that yourselves. I'm just done carrying the rubble. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. My father's knuckles were white against the wood. My mother's eyes shone with something between fury and fear. Rachel's face crumpled, her mask slipping. And in that silence, I felt it, the shift. The weight sliding off my shoulders onto theirs where it had always belonged. I stood, taking the folder with me. This house, this name, this family, you weaponized all of it against me. Consider this the last time you'll have the chance. I turned to the door, then paused. You voted me out. I'm just making it official. The cold night met me like an old friend, sharp and honest. Behind me, the house glowed, too warm, too staged, a theater I no longer had to perform in. For the first time, I wasn't leaving as their scapegoat. I was leaving as myself. The next morning, I emailed my lawyer the new evidence. She called within the hour, her voice brisk but certain. Ethan, this isn't just repayment anymore. This is leverage. You can walk away free or you can take them down. The choice is yours. For once, the choice really was mine. The decision sat heavy in my chest, but not the way fear used to. It was weight, yes, but weight I finally had the strength to hold. For days, I carried the folder everywhere, tucked under my arm at work in the passenger seat of my car next to me on the couch, like a reminder that the truth was no longer hiding in shadows. Each page was a scar proof of wounds I had once tried to ignore, and scars I realized aren't weaknesses, they're records of survival. Rachel tried reaching out first. A late-night call that went to voicemail, then a text the next morning. "We need to talk. Please don't do this." I stared at it until the screen went dark. Not once in her words did she say I'm sorry. Not once did she say I was wrong. It was still about what I might do to her, not what she had done to me. My father's message came next, curt as always. "Think carefully. You will regret making enemies of blood." I deleted it without replying. Blood had been their shield for too long, a word they wielded like chains. But blood alone doesn't make family actions do. And their actions had spoken louder than any DNA ever could. My mother waited the longest. When her call finally came, her voice was brittle like glass about to shatter. "Ethan, you've always been the responsible one, the good son. Don't throw that away by dragging us through the mud." I almost laughed. Responsible. Good. As if being their scapegoat was a badge of honor. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking. Not with fear, but with release. "I'm not throwing anything away." "You already did." I hung up before she could answer. The next step wasn't revenge, it was clarity. I met with my lawyer again, sliding the folder across her desk one final time. She flipped through the evidence, nodding with a calm that steadied me. "You don't have to take them to court if you don't want to," she said, "but you can. And knowing you can is power. You decide how far this goes." For the first time, the choice wasn't between sacrifice and silence, it was between freedom and fire. And I chose freedom. We finalized the repayment plan, binding and enforceable. If they defaulted, the lien on the house would activate. If they tried to smear me, the fraud files would surface. No more begging. No more bleeding. Just boundaries carved into law. The day I signed the papers, a strange calm settled over me. Not victory, not triumph, something deeper. Peace. The kind you don't feel until you stop holding your breath. That weekend, I packed a bag and drove out of town. No destination, just the open road and the sound of the radio filling the silence that used to scare me. I stopped in a small coastal town, ate clam chowder alone, watched the waves crash against rocks that had stood for centuries. And I thought, this is what family should feel like. Solid, unshakable. Something that doesn't erode the moment you stop giving. I'll be honest, there are nights I still ache. Nights I replay Rachel's words at that table. "We voted. You're not family anymore." But then I remember the truth, I was never really part of their family. I was their safety net, their cash cow, their scapegoat. What they voted out wasn't me. It was their illusion that I'd stay forever. And in losing them, I found myself. If you've stayed with me through this story, maybe you felt it too. That hollow pain of realizing the people who should have loved you were the ones who hurt you most. Maybe you've wondered if walking away makes you selfish or heartless or wrong. Let me tell you, it doesn't. It makes you free. Family isn't the people who drain you. Family is the people who show up, who choose you, who protect you even when it's inconvenient. And sometimes family is just you choosing yourself for the first time. So if you're standing where I stood, trembling with the fear of leaving, hear me now. You are stronger than you think, and you are allowed to walk away. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, if it reminded you of your own battles, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more stories like this. And I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me your story, because your voice matters. I thought losing my family would break me, but it didn't. It saved me.